episode of Drink Up with myself and my name also says Sam Anderson. That's hilarious. I am not Sam Anderson. That is Sam Anderson. I'm Adam Smith, and we've got Sean Smallwood and UJ Paradise here with us. Welcome, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Of course. Before we get into it, we'll give a shout out to our sponsors. As always, Jay Williams of Freebird. We'll see if Sam's got his Freebird, obligatory Freebird. There it is. Ryan Hallman and Rocks Advisors, Sam and Alicia Varga with Bev Assets, and then myself and Alias Advising. And I think that's the list. For those of you out there watching, Sean is a longtime friend of mine who passed the bar a couple years ago now, and we'll get into that. And UJ is the woman who's actually my attorney. And so Sean's just my friend who happens to be an attorney. UJ is my attorney. We'll get into that in a little bit and things that they know and all that. But first, welcome, guys. If UJ, if you want to start, and we're talking about it a little bit, how did we get to you being an attorney?
Yeah, so mine's not as interesting as I hope, but when I was in undergrad, I was working as an assistant to someone who worked in energy policy and lobbying. And every time I would talk to anybody, like a senator, a mayor, whatever, they'd be like, you should be an attorney. And that's where like the idea started. I didn't really want to be in energy policy and lobbying, but I think that's where the seed was planted. And then when I was, 19, 20, I was like, okay, well, what am I going to do with my life? I guess I'll go to law school. And there I went. And fun fact, when I was actually in undergrad, Sean was my student government advisor. So Sean has seen me cry way before law school.
I did not know that. That's fantastic. Also, very kind of people to be like, hey, as I hear you talk, you should be an attorney, because Sean knows this. Most people, when they hear me talk, they're like, you should just stop talking. That's our advice for you.
I've actually heard it's code for you're kind of an asshole, but I've chosen to take it in a positive way.
Oh, that's fantastic. Absolutely. Yeah, two things can be true. Sure. Yeah, for sure. Shanzi, I know the story, but walk us through it. How do we get here?
Oh, by the way, can I just, are we getting charged for this call?
No,
that's an attorney joke.
We call this client development.
Yeah.
In our world of business development.
If we were in person, we could actually buy drinks. So
Next time.
Oh, wow.
Next
That's
time.
funny.
For
The
sure.
true story, my dad, one of his good friends, he was getting some advice from his friend, right? They were just having a conversation. And I think, UG, I told you the story maybe when we first met, but a bill showed up in the mail from his friend. So you gotta get clarify. You gotta clarify here, right?
Yeah, it's always good to make sure you know.
Devil's in the details.
Well, so my journey to law school was a bit more circuitous, in the sense that I graduated from undergrad in 2013. I thought that I was going to save the world by being a student-facing student services professional in higher education. And so I decided to go to grad school in Vermont. And so I left Texas. I'm originally from Texas, but I moved to Vermont, lived in the mountains for 2 years. It was the best 2 years of my life. And I got my first job at the University of Minnesota and moved out here kind of on a whim, truly, and was hanging out with a lot of Adam's friends and Adam in particular, and that's what kind of made me stay here. I also met my partner, my future husband, while I was in Minnesota, and so I remember there came an inflection point for me whenever I was working with students where I was never really allowed in the decision-making room. Like there was always kind of this barrier of like, okay, well, like you're just kind of you're the student whisperer. Like you're the guy who can help students, but we don't really need you in here to like make decisions. And that's not to say that the University of Minnesota doesn't allow student services professionals to like help make decisions. That's certainly not true. It's just not where I was in my career at the time. And if you know me, you know a couple of things. You know I don't like to lose. You know I don't like to be told no about certain things. And whenever you tell me I can't do something, I'm gonna do it. And so I decided to try and figure out like who was in the room and how did they get there. And one of them was general counsel. Her name is Carrie Ryan Gallia. She's a district court judge, I think, in the state of Minnesota now. But she was brilliant. Like, I just thought I was so enamored by this person. So I took her to lunch and I asked her, "How do I get your job?" She said, "Well, you have to go to law school." And I said, "How do I get your job without going to law school?" She said, "You can't." so so that was truly my path, was deciding that I wanted to be a part of something, a part of a profession that can influence decisions in different ways. And I've found various ways to do that in various pathways in my career. So yeah, that's how I came to law school. And Adam was there whenever he saw me studying for the LSAT. He saw me studying for probably almost every class that I took in law school. And then he saw me study for the bar, or probably didn't really see me study for the bar because no one saw
Like,
me.
I didn't actually see you ever, but I heard that's what you were doing through Nick or via text from you. Yeah.
Yeah. So Adam's been around a while, and so he's seen a lot of me. But yeah, that's my not so short answer to.
No, it's so, and I don't even know this. Is the goal for you now? Not that it can't change, but is the goal for you now to still become a district court judge in kind of that way that you envisioned originally?
No, I think it's changed quite a bit.
Sure.
For me personally, I think law school, like once you kind of get to see how the sausage is made, um, it changes your perspective on how to do things and like
Sure.
what to do. And so for me, and UJ, I don't know if you feel the same, but I feel like I came in to law school with a very specific idea of like, okay, like this is exactly what I'm gonna do. Um, and I came out thinking like, there's a couple of different facets to actual legal practice. Um, and I like the arguing, the being in the courtroom aspect of my job. I love the intellectual fight that you get into with other people who are really, really intelligent. Um, but I also like helping people reach their own goals. So it kind of goes back to my student services background. Like whenever UJ referenced that I was her student government advisor, my whole role was just to help students be successful in advocating for what they need. That's what I thought my role was. That's how I envisioned it. And now I kind of have a similar role in many ways. Like I'm an advisor, saying like, oh, like this is how we can structure this employment agreement, or this is my advice around how to navigate this tricky leave situation with an employee
Sure.
who is in a state that has very complicated leave laws, and it's all for the purpose of helping them as a client, as a business, meet whatever goals that they are trying to meet. The legal aspect is just a sliver of that, but if I can help demystify some of those aspects of it, I think that is a successful day, in my opinion.
Sure. I mean, half the gig's education, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So to dive right in from from a CPG perspective, we got Morning Duncan, Richard, and Cogs coming through in the comments. It's as good a place to start as any, and maybe this is a question for UJ to start with, but early stage brands, I think Sean, you mentioned it, right? Like they have, even comparing your sort of legal journey to maybe a brand owner's journey, and I'm sure UJ, you've got a similar experience of like, hey, when I started law school, I thought it was going to be X, but then as I learned more, kind of my opinions, my values maybe, but just like what my North Star was changed. So Cogs' question is around IP protection, and I'm assuming you've had conversations, right? I'm putting words in your mouth, but where someone's like, hey, this is my idea and I want IP protection on it, and then 6 months later they're like, hey, it's still my idea, but it changed and now I need IP protection on that, right? And so like, walk us through what people need to know just very generally on what all that looks like.
Yeah, so I mean, I could talk forever on this just because it's such a
Right.
vast landscape. But I mean,
Sure.
really early on, from like the beginnings of an idea, my advice, and I'm sure Sean agrees, is you should form an entity. Different entity types work for different ideas, right? But usually an LLC for like brand owners is the easiest way to start. Sometimes we'll see corporations, if they're planning to have a lot of investors and issue stock, and operate on like a board and shareholder relationship. But forming an entity like early on will give you legal protection for like your personal assets and etc. For example, if you have an idea, you start working with it, but you didn't form an entity, and then someone's like, hey, that's my idea, I'm going to sue you now. If you end up owing them 100 grand, that's your personal 100 grand that you now owe them, right? So that means like your house, your car, whatever, your entire bank account. So if you have a legal entity, only the legal entity would owe that amount of money. And if it doesn't have it, it doesn't have it. They can't go after you. I mean, in some cases they can, but like that's a whole other, you know, rabbit hole. And then, for, yeah, there's like an 8-step test. It's called Victoria Elevator, etc. That's Lebanon case law. But
Talking
that's
about building
weird.
companies the right way, so I probably did it the wrong way. You, Jay, we started the company, didn't talk to you. We talked to you after we started the company.
I wasn't going to bring it up, Sam.
Yeah, you messed up. No, I'm kidding. But that's you don't always need a lawyer to start an LLC either. I
Yeah.
would say the only time to like bring, not the only time, but you can always bring in a lawyer. But a big time that I would recommend bringing in a lawyer is when you're working with someone and it's like 50-50, or you're trying to negotiate like what your rights in the business and intellectual property are. We see a lot of like 50-50 like LLCs where one person like is like the money guy and then one person is like the idea guy. So, and that's like hard, right? So when you split who owns the IP, these are like conversations you need to have like early on. I always say like it sounds awful, but if you guys like break up, then what? Like we have to talk through all of the steps of who's getting what like early on. It's like a prenup for businesses. But it's so worth doing on the front end, and the hope is you never have to use it. But if you ever do have to use those provisions, they're not vague. We're not going to court. We're not fighting over things because it's written out clearly.
Yeah, we did
So-
that for our joint venture. We, you know,
Yeah.
we spelled that out, and,
Mhm.
and you were very helpful in terms of the letter of, what's it called when I was working with our partner's attorney.
The
but I got-
engagement letter.
I got the engagement
Yeah.
letter, so thank you for that, by the way.
Yeah. So a little background was, Sam's doing a joint venture with someone, and basically their attorney was advising, and I was like, okay, but like you have to understand that that attorney is representing his client and his client only. So if you want your interest protected, you should make sure that they're representing you both and the company's interests, not just that other person. So
Right.
yeah, so like every time I work with a business that hasn't been formed yet, I like put every single like member on the engagement letter because the business doesn't exist yet. But I want to make sure that everyone's protected, because if someone's not my client, I'm not in charge of their interests.
That's a landmine if you don't do it, I'm assuming.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we see malpractice suits over that all
Yeah.
the time, because technically our ethical duty runs to the client that we're engaged with,
Mm-hmm.
and there's specific parameters for good reason. I think that there's a history of bad actors that
Mhm.
haven't had everyone's best interest at heart. And truthfully, like whenever you receive an engagement letter from an attorney, you don't know, like, okay, do they really have my interests? Like, what are the risks in them representing both me and someone else?
Mhm.
Because usually if we're representing both of you, we're conflicted out from representing you in a dispute between the two of you.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
So,
Well,
I kept you, Jay, out of it.
I know. I'm here for you when you need me. No.
yes.
I do have, well, I don't know, Sean, do you think I should tell a story about a Minnesota situation? It's in the news, so it's not really.
As long as it's not,
It's not us.
as long as it's
I
nothing
was like,
private.
we're- yeah,
It's
we
nothing,
love
I mean,
story time.
it's all over it was all over the news in 2017. So,
Please.
yeah, basically, family run business. I'm not going to name names, but I'm sure you can find it if you Google it. Family run business, really big business. Like I'm talking private jets, etc. Like big business in the Twin Cities.
That's our goal, Adam, private jets.
And
Nice.
basically the dad, the patriarch of the family plus the owner of the business, was having an affair, and the attorneys knew about it. And once the wife and children found out, they like they got a divorce, etc. But then the attorneys actually they didn't get sued, but they were reprimanded by the bar association, because they're like, well, you knew that this was happening. You knew that this put the business in jeopardy because you represented the business and the children. You knew he was using
Oh.
business funds to like pay for these private jet
Sure.
trips. He sent her kids to college. He bought them horses and like Range Rovers and like etc.
Sounds like our federal government, but I won't go for it on it.
We won't approach that topic at all.
Right? Yeah.
We'll
Oh my
steer
God.
clear of that one.
That's
But-
wild.
Yeah, but all that to say, it's like the attorneys were reprimanded because in their engagement letter, they represented the company, not him, and they
Sure.
knew that this was putting
Sure.
the company at risk, and they did not inform the other owners of the company, which they should have, because
Sure.
that was their duty.
Sure.
Yeah. So
Wow.
fun little tidbit about 2017 Minnesota families.
Totally.
Get the agreement
so to-
signed and make sure your attorneys look at it, and the best investment you can make as an attorney is, I would say that it's expensive if you don't take advantage of the services.
Hmm.
You know, at the end of the day.
Well,
we
let's. I want to pick on that for a second, and Cogs. I promise I'll come back to your question about internal IP versus sort of external or world-facing IP. I will come back to that, but I want to touch on that really quick because it's something that everybody on this call has heard me say before, and people potentially listening have heard me say about the people on this call. Good legal representation ain't fucking cheap. Let's just pull that Band-Aid now, right? Period, full stop, end of story. Sean and UJ, I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, but your hourly rates are somewhere in the just south of $500 range, right?
Hmm.
Yep, we just got our new rates out, and we're just south of 500 now.
Yeah.
Are we grandfathered in?
Yeah, I can take an educated guess on what your school bills are, so fucking good for you. But B, right, like, I've got you guys who I work with pretty consistently, and then I've got, folks, shout out to Mr. Prochnow at GT Law, Greenberg Traurig, who is my label review guy and my FDA law guy and my so on, and he's somewhere in the neighborhood of $1,000 an hour. I mean, it ain't cheap, right? Like, it just isn't. But the question that comes to that is, you talk to UJ about, setting up an LLC on your own, and if you're doing it single owner, if you're keeping it simple, like, you could probably do that by yourself. I'm sure you guys hear this word so often that, your eyes are done rolling because they're exhausted. Like, at what point do you go, okay, you can do it on your own, or you can do it with LegalZoom, or you can do it with shit like that, and, like, where's the line on, no, now you actually do need a professional, right? And I know the payment is going to be the payment, but you need to just do it.
I think
I'm
it
sure
is
another
based
different
on your
perspective.
risk tolerance. That's my
Yeah.
answer for everything. Like, for example, before we started the call, we were talking about, like, what should we call it? Sean is a lot less risk tolerant than I am. So, and I always tell everyone, I was like, this is a you decision, right? Like, what are you willing to risk for this? Again, like I said, like, I actually would never use LegalZoom, so please don't do that. I think, like, yeah, it shouldn't be that, like, I just would never use anything like a form from
Sure.
there. But
Sure.
I think that this is like my like life hack, and it's like not great advice for like from a firm, but like if you've ever signed an agreement, right? Like, for example, if you own real estate and you want a lease, look at your commercial leases that you've signed in the past as the counterparty, right? Like, take it from them, like, so if I ever wanted to be a landlord, I would look at the lease that I signed for my college apartment, because that was very aggressive, and it was not to my benefit that I signed that, but it would be a great form as a landlord, so it's things like that. So if you've ever like signed an independent contractor agreement, maybe start from there. Like, if you really can't afford legal representation, there's also
Sure.
a lot of free legal clinics in the Twin Cities, like the University of Minnesota Business Law Clinic. Like, I still volunteer with them, and the students basically do the legal work, but then the attorneys oversee. So like, I've had a lot of like there's been a lot of clients. I had some of them at my bridal shower. It was excellent. But I would say, like, it's based on your risk tolerance, but I think anytime there's any intellectual property potential dispute involved, any partnerships involved, and anything regulated, like if you're doing food and beverage, I would get somebody involved. Like, I have a client who wanted to sell eggs because she has chickens, and then we looked into like the actual laws, and it was way too complicated. She's like, I'm just gonna keep giving them away for free. And I was like, that's fine. Like,
Right,
that's totally
right.
allowed. But
Right.
you want anything in a regulated industry, I would recommend getting an attorney.
Sure. Sean, anything you want to add there?
I mean, I think that there's a couple of things. I think whenever you're setting up your business, I think getting insurance for any type of legal risk. We call it, I forget what the,
Errors and omissions or the general liability.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
there's a lot of
I
different
carry,
policies
I
out
carry
there.
both. I carry E&O and I also carry general liability.
Mhm.
And within our agreements, UJ knows this, we require our reps to actually carry those things as well.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think that I always say whenever you have an insurance policy, also still review it to make sure that your preferred counsel is on that insurance policy, because
Oh, I need to add
often,
you.
yeah, because often our firm, because of our rates and because of where we are in the market, we're not always considered panel eligible for those insurance policies unless the client is asking for it. And so that's just something to be aware of, is that whenever you even get an insurance policy, you need to review it more in depth, because you might not have your preferred attorney on there, and they might give you to an attorney who is listed with the insurance company.
Got
And
it.
those are fine attorneys. I've interacted with them in different aspects. They're just not your preferred attorney. They don't know your business. They don't have an established relationship with you, and that costs money to get them caught up on what your
Right.
situation is.
Ah,
And so
interesting.
that's a
enough.
huge piece of it that I think we run into this a lot with some of our clients. And I do mostly employment work. I do employment litigation. And whenever there is a dispute with an employee, sometimes we're not listed, and sometimes the insurance company will say, okay, you can have Taft as your preferred attorney. You will just need to pay the difference between the rate that we're willing to pay them and what they charge. And so we see
Sure.
that occasionally. So
Sure.
I think that that's the first thing, is make sure you get insurance. The second thing I would say is, if you are going with an attorney who charges at a very, very low rate, and again, I'm not trying to disparage any attorneys out there. Like, there's some
Just a
really
little
fine
bit.
attorneys. But what I will say is that, and UJ and I have talked about this, we sometimes have to correct a lot of work that has been done previously, and that costs more money on the back end than us just starting from the ground up sometimes. I can tell you that there's been several instances where I have received something, and it was like an employee handbook, for instance. I'll just say it's an employee handbook. And it was drafted by someone else, or it was drafted by ChatGPT, which has happened. It happens.
I think it's
And it's
happening in real time everywhere.
Mhm.
Yes, it's happening all the time. And it takes so much more work to try and fix the language rather than working with us proactively. I know it's a headache, and I know it's a huge cost up front, but it's a huge investment that pays off dividends in the back end. And that's the thing that whenever I'm talking with potential clients, I'm always like, you can certainly go with another attorney. That's your choice. I can recommend other attorneys for you if my price point is too high. But what I will say is, depending on who you go with, if you have a dispute over it and it needs to be redrafted or something needs to happen with it, you'll have to come back to us, and it's going to cost you more.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. No.
that's not always true, but that's my pitch to people.
No. I mean, I
And
think.
especially around IP stuff is so. We have a whole. I don't even touch IP. Whenever an IP issue comes up, I make sure that one of our IP. We have amazing IP folks at our firm. I make sure that they're clued in automatically. I can advise you from the employee perspective on how to protect works made for hire and ownership over copyright issues. Make sure that that's in your agreements. But whenever it comes to like changing ideas, trademarking them, getting them registered with the U.S. Patent and Trademark Board, getting all that done, you need an IP professional who actually understands the industry, because they can also help you if your initial trademark is denied or it would be potentially infringing on someone else. They can actually help advise on other ideas that you might have to help cut through some of the issues and help you craft, it's ultimately your decision, but help you craft whatever that brand is that has the least amount of risk in terms. Is that Monroe?
That is Monroe.
Oh yeah, I know it.
Mhm.
But they can help you craft your brand. Of course, it's your decision around legal risk, and that helps avoid issues in the future from like a infringement claim.
Sure. So I wanna jump in because Cogs is blowing us up with comments and some really good questions. But before we get there, the old adage, whether it's the work Sam offers, the work I offer, the work you two offer, like if it feels too good to be true, it probably is, right? If it feels like, oh my God, this is such a fucking steal, maybe take a little bit sharper look at it, right? Because the story I'll share before I get to the questions. Years ago, at BevSource, we had a client who had a lightly caffeinated water, right? And it was a blue can with white lettering, and the first 3 letters of the brand name sounded real similar to a soda brand that also has a blue can and white lettering, right? You can guess who they got a cease and desist letter from, right?
Automatically, probably,
Oh, yeah.
like
Yes.
within the first week.
Yes, right. To the point, to the conversation we just had, right? Like LegalZoom's not going to tell you there's potential risk there, right? A full attorney, or a full legal firm is going to do that upfront. I'll use a word that I don't know truly what it means, but I assume it covers it. Their due diligence of like, hey, here's kind of all the shit that could be coming your way based on what you're trying to do, right?
Yeah, people try to assist
so to get to Cogs,
they try to stop you from moving forward. And even, I can give an example, I don't know if I can say it, maybe I can. Yeah, Tina's Vodka. Tito's Vodka tried to stop Tina's Vodka and they couldn't, but Tina had probably a really good attorney. So she owns Tina's Vodka.
Yeah.
Tito's doesn't own Tina's Vodka,
It
and
happens.
vodka can't be owned. But Tito's felt like
Yeah.
Tina's Vodka was an infringement on them. And I'm not an attorney, but
Yeah.
some good attorneys
So,
to battle that.
I wanna get
Litigators,
to,
Sean had some litigators in that conversation, I bet.
Oh yeah, I mean, I love arguing with people about whether or not something is actually a breach or whatever it is. But that would be I kind of want to look up that case afterwards, just because I'm a nerd in that way. But
Yeah, dude. Yeah.
Also, again, let's pick on that. Like, and UJ made the comment about whether it's part-time school or you see it in the real estate world a lot. Like people that do real estate part-time. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying I work with a lot of brand owners for whom their CPG, their food and beverage business, is the side hustle, right? So like I'm not knocking that. What I am saying is, if you're already in that position, surround yourself with people who do this full time, and more importantly, people who fucking nerd out on it in their free time, right? Like, that's the type of support you want. You don't want a team of part timers because it's going to feel that way, right? Just, it's my own PSA. So Cogs' question twofold. A, how do you advise people on IP, not only internally in terms of split maybe among the owners, but externally, kind of what we just talked about with cease and desist and Tina's versus Tito's and that kind of thing. And then Cogs is actually based in Canada. So do you guys do any work as far as like, oh, I have a brand here that I started in Minnesota, but now I'm taking it into Toronto, and what does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, so I actually am just advised. I have a new client that I am just advising on internal and external IP because we're doing
Okay.
this complicated internal structure where like someone has like options in the company, but externally
Sure.
they've like worked with a lot of companies to develop certain products that they like want to use in some capacity. So for internal IP, I think if you're it's easier when you're just starting out because you can agree to what's going on, right? For your employees, you want them to sign employee invention assignments. For your consultants, you want them to make sure it's like, you want them to sign it over to you at the end or like come to an agreement, right? Because it's not like automatically like yours, depending on the state too. But we just want to make sure that IP is addressed in any internal agreement. And we always recommend entering into written agreements with your employees and your contractors. Like everything should be written. Like this should be not like, even though like, there's like in employee agreements, right? You can terminate that at any time, but you want to make sure you have rights to all of their inventions. And if they like used your computer to code something, like if they use company time and money, etc., to do that, then that should be the company's. I mean, or if you are nice enough, it can be theirs, right? But like we see a lot of like dispute over that. So internally, I would just say document whatever you want the intention to be. That is your business decision. But like document it internally. Externally, there's a lot of different like things. It depends on what business you're in, right? Like if we're talking trademarks, if you're using a logo and it's not trademarked, you still have common law rights in that logo. As long as you've been using it and you didn't stop using it, you have common law rights. So you don't always have to be like, gotta file my trademark like today, but you don't know if that trademark's infringing on somebody else's business. And we do these things called trademark clearance searches at our firm where we will go through and we will literally list all of the ways you could get sued. It is expensive, I think, for like a full search, like a really comprehensive one, it's like $3,000. But you'll get like every single thing you could possibly be sued for, or every single, and it'll also like not do the full search if like it's already trademarked. You know, like it's not
Sure.
gonna like
Mhm.
charge you
Sure.
$3,000 to be like, by the way, you can't use this. You know, it's only if it's like close enough. So like you were saying, like the 3-letter blue can situation, right? Like that would have been caught in a trademark clearance search before somebody had already produced like all of these labels, etc. That saves you
Yeah.
money like in the front end. We always recommend
Yeah.
doing this before you move forward with anything you think is going to actually like make you significant money. Like
Sure.
that's my personal recommendation. And then for patents, I don't really work with patents at all. We send that over upstairs to floor 26 to our IP council. I'm like, hi, somebody please help.
Yeah, all of our
but-
IP people are on the 26th floor of our building.
Yeah,
so we're just like,
they're right above
26,
us where they
please
should
help.
be.
You guys have a
I feel like
building?
that's how I.
I'm
Oh,
sorry,
yeah.
How many
It's pretty.
floors do you have?
5.
Holy
No.
cow.
We're 22
Yeah.
through 26, so yeah, 5 floors in kind of the central building in downtown
All
Minneapolis. the IDS
attorneys?
Center.
Well, we have staff and paralegals in our building as
Okay.
well, but
And
they're
our
like each floor is
marketing.
attorneys and marketing and our IT department. So yeah, Sean's on 23 and I'm on 28.5.
Yeah.
Sorry,
They keep
Sean,
us
you did
apart.
get
We talk too
25,
much.
But you know, hey, still time.
It's okay. I take the internal staircase and go bug UJ every once in a while.
Yeah,
Um,
I know.
Oh God.
especially because her
Wait.
floor just is brighter. Like, I don't know what it is, but the lights on her floor are brighter.
It's me actually.
Keep you-
But
Keep you in the dungeon, Sean. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Oh my God.
I mean, on the
Code's-
specific
oh,
question around, I think, IP externally, especially like
Mhm.
cross-border IP issues.
Mhm.
I'll say from an employment perspective, we have recommended counsel that we have based in Canada that we will often refer clients to because Canadian law is just, it's built different. It's based on a French system of laws. This is a very nerd piece, but different countries obviously have different laws, but I think what people sometimes don't understand is the foundation of those laws look a little different.
Mhm.
And so in Canada, I believe that it's based on a French system, or at least maybe some of their provinces are, which is very different than the United States version, which is based on an English system. And so there's a long history of laws that are related to this that it's kind of like whenever you're starting a brand, like whatever foundation you start from, like your brand kind of mimics that to a certain extent.
Mhm.
It's the same way with laws, and so it just looks a little different. But what I will also say is that whenever it comes to IP, state law actually has a lot of nuances to it as well. So sometimes I think we think of the U.S. just has like a one body of law around like intellectual property in particular. But what I will say is that if you have an employee or an independent contractor in certain states, the big states that I think of often are Minnesota and California in particular. The agreement has to include certain language in order to be enforceable. And so it's not just including the language that, whatever you do for the company is ultimately owned by the company. It has to have very specific statutory language sometimes in order for courts, if it ever comes into a dispute, for the court to recognize that the agreement is enforceable. And so whenever you just go on LegalZoom or ChatGPT, one, those models are built to kind of affirm like your own thinking. They're not really built to scrutinize your thinking.
Sean, I'm never wrong
provide you-
anyway, so that's not a problem.
So I'm gonna go.
then you're susceptible to being sued, probably. But, I hope not, obviously. But yeah.
This may not be on subject, but I've been looking up. Yeah, made me. So Sean, you made me look up this. So it's actually Sazerac, which was the suit, and actually Sazerac had a label in 1968 that had the word Tina's on it. And they challenged her, and it went to the USPTO approved her mark in November 2020. But a month after it was approved, there was letters demanding she abandon her mark, her TTB Cola, her company name, and even her website URL. Luckily, one of Cress's colleagues in the liquor industry connected her to an IP litigator, Douglas Q. Hahn, and together they challenged the claim. And after a drawn-out legal battle, Tina Caress and her vodka brand had won in the end. Sazerac dropped their threat and opposition, and Tina registered her trademark. So, like, that's why you need a damn good attorney.
That's wild.
Like,
Yeah.
it just, I mean, when we talk about IP, I mean, she like developed this great label. It's my name, the whole bit, and someone from a 1968 label went ahead and challenged it.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, sorry.
And you need to also have an attorney who like knows what their expertise is, right? And so in this situation, I'm not the person you go to talk about setting up an LLC. I refer every person who wants to talk to me about that. I say, I'll sign you as a client, but you're going to work with UJ primarily. I'm great on employment stuff, and I have a lot of people in my group that actually are the experts that I work with and learn from every single day. But the IP people at our firm, like if there's an IP thing, I automatically send it to them. I'm like, this is not my lane. I'm not going to try and advise you on it, because if I do, that's probably malpractice, because I just don't have that expertise. And so I think that that's what's also really critical is that you, like, for instance, Adam goes to GT for the food labeling stuff. We have food labeling people, but if he's comfortable going to a specific expert, I think I want him to go to that person, because that, especially around FDA regulation, that is a whole area that I have I don't ever touch on. Tax, don't touch. You know, like there's just all these areas within the law, and if you get an attorney who says that I can do it all, that's my red flag. I want to know like what you care about as an attorney and like what you do most often, because that's what you're actually going to be really good at.
Yeah. And it's sometimes okay to say, I don't know, right, to a question, because I would rather not answer and be like, I need to like look into that and get back to you, than be like, I can give you every answer you need on this one call, right? Like things are different. Things change every single day, right? We see new cases come out every single day, like non-solicits in Delaware, like there's stuff going on over there. And then now we're like, okay, well, maybe we don't do Delaware for like this non-solicit, you know, maybe we just do the state that it's in, right? Like there's a lot of things happening every day, but if I answered you based on knowledge I had from 6 months ago, that would be malpractice. I would much rather say, I don't know. And
I always give my opinion, but I always say I'm not an attorney, and you should advise your counsel. You should take your counsel should advise you on next steps. If you want to go forward with this, that's totally your call. And I put it in writing. I'm happy. Here's my opinion. This is what I would do, but if you feel comfortable, great. But again, seek legal counsel. I always say that.
Yeah,
that's a good thing to say.
You should probably every put that in everything. We always seek legal counsel if it has to do with a contract.
Yes.
So I don't know, Sean and EJ, I don't know if you guys have had this happen, and I do have one other question I want to make sure we get to before we hop off, but the number of times that I will see this specific situation where brand A they'll be like, yeah, I have an attorney. I'm like, okay. And for years I left it at that, and in the last little while I've started getting more specific on what do they do, right? Well, they're an attorney. On what? Like to what end, right? Because what happens is, and I see this specific example over and over and over again, is the brand will be making a product with a nutritional facts panel, right? It is a food and beverage product. It is governed by the FDA. It has a nutritional facts panel. And their attorney, not knowing the food and beverage rules and regulations, right, will go, oh, okay, so you should put on there, these statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration, blah, 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 however the rest of that goes. That little boilerplate, right? And they'll tell them, like, yeah, you have functional ingredients in there, like, you should put that on there as a safety, barrier on your claims and stuff. And I'm like, that's adorable, and I'm not an attorney, but that's fucking wrong because that boilerplate goes on supplements. That is a
Yeah.
supplemental boilerplate. If you put that on your can, I'm not saying you're hurting people, but you do look like a moron, right?
Mm.
And it's not offering you the legal protection you think it is, right? And people look at me and be like, well, our attorney said. I'm like, does your attorney do food and beverage? No, they do real estate in Bakersfield.
Yeah.
Okay, cool, right?
And that's where I'll say, like, every attorney, we're all trained to figure
Yeah.
out the answer. We're all like, that's what law school truly is. It's training you how to
Sure.
think like a lawyer.
Mhm.
It teaches us how to, like, I can probably find the body of law that would answer all of those questions. I can look at I do this every day. Like, I will see a leave law, for instance, like pregnancy leave in a state, and I'll interpret it one way, but I'll go and then talk to a colleague about it who has
Mhm.
actually worked with that particular law a lot, and they're like, this is actually how it works in practice. So
Mhm.
there is, we are all attorneys are capable of looking at the
Mhm.
same law, but unless you have that depth of expertise
Yeah.
to know how it works in practice, that's where the situation gets extremely tricky, especially around some of these specific areas. And that's where I would ask the same question, like, okay, well, what kind of law do they practice most often?
Mhm.
If it's real estate, I would trust them probably with almost any real estate transaction, depending on the type of real estate it is, if it's
Mhm.
commercial versus personal. Um, but if you need them for food and beverage, you need someone that not only knows, like, where the food and beverage laws are located in the compendium of laws that we have in this country.
Mhm.
You need to know that they can find the regulations, but you need to know that they've actually advised brands through a dispute potentially sometimes,
Mhm.
because that's where you really start understanding the intricacies and how those laws work in practice. And that's more value. That's where lawyers add value,
Yeah.
is whenever we understand how things work in practice. We don't have we don't have the industry expertise that you all do, but whenever we know how it works in practice for your industry, that's where we add value for all of you. And that's where you need someone who can do that type of work, that can say, here's what the law says, here's what it actually means.
Sure.
Because those two things might not necessarily be the same.
Like, I'm a lawyer, but I have my own immigration attorney because I don't do immigration, and it's honestly really complicated, and it's scary, and it's high stakes, and I want somebody who's done it like thousands and thousands of times to do it for
Totally.
me. You know, like,
Yeah.
I do not want to be in charge of that. But I think that's what's really nice about working at a big firm is, like, we have so many resources, right? Like, this is kind of where, like, that's where the value add is in paying like a slightly higher rate. Like, it'll save you a lot of money for me to walk to 26, ask an IP question, and then someone's like, oh yeah, here's the answer. I just did that yesterday, you know,
Yeah.
versus me
Sure.
spending 5 hours trying to Google, like, what is this IP law? How does it work? What's the case law? How have they interpreted it? You know, like,
Well,
that's the value out of a
right.
big
Yeah, well,
firm.
so it's like, so both Adam and I are in the beverage industry, right?
Mhm.
We always recommend Alicia and I clients to Adam because he knows the operations side of this business. We don't. So they need. So if I would sit there and talk about like co-packing, canning, you know, how the lines work, you know, formulation, everything Adam knows, I would be doing a disservice to my client. So the best thing we do is like, hey, meet Adam Smith. He can answer those questions. And I probably did you a disservice in that, Adam. But my point is
Okay.
you got to bring, you know, bring the expertise in. You know, and then Adam would connect someone with me. He just did it the other day. I'm a, you know, sales guy, route to market, distribution, and this is how it works. And we're both collectively working with this client. The client's looking at being a co-packer and doing some other things. And then I'm looking at, okay, if you want to build your brand, this is what you need to do to build your brand. So we're both
So
in
we
the
got-
beverage industry, but we both have different expertise.
Right.
So we got a little bit of time left. I want to this question, and it actually comes to what we were talking about before around settlements and the cost of taking things to trial and this and that, right? I know, right? We're ending on your favorite part, Sean.
It's my favorite thing.
Yeah. So Kogs' question is, how about those class action lawsuits that are popping up every week with the better for you category? I'm assuming he's talking about like the poppy and the fiber. You know, you got to drink like 100 of them a day or some shit, right? Like those kind of things. But whether it's, you know, you layer in that and take it whatever direction you guys feel is most valuable, but, you know, that in tandem with what we were talking about of, you know, hey, if you're a small brand or even a brand of relative size and you're in a lawsuit against a retailer, a distributor, a larger brand, a whoever, right? your advice as lawyers on approaching that and like, screw those guys, we're going to trial, or hey, let's find a way to talk through this and figure something out. Like with the last few minutes we had, would love your perspective on that.
Yeah, that's such a big topic, and it's one that I know that I feel like I encounter every day, just because by nature of my work, and so I haven't really explained this well, but I mostly just do employment work. Half of my work is advising people through those situations, but the other half of it is kind of employment litigation, and I do a fair amount of general commercial litigation as well. I've been doing that quite a bit more lately, and so what I've learned, at least in the past 3 years, is that the ultimate question is, what is your risk tolerance? It's the same question that UJ asked earlier, or that she asked a lot of her clients, is like, what's your risk tolerance? The class action pieces itself, what I'll say is those are very difficult cases, and they're very complex because you have a class of litigants that's 20, 30, sometimes even thousands of litigants that are suing you or your brand, specifically making claims around maybe deceptive trade practices, or there's a whole host of causes of action that they could sue for, and those are very, very expensive. I've seen, I mean, you can Google any of these class actions, but some of them settle for the big brands, the big class actions, they're settling into the billions of dollars. Even in Minnesota, I've seen some class actions settle around the $11 million, $12 million range, just because of the nature of the class. The class is usually less than, and by class I mean the number of people who are suing. Sure. The class is less than 100 people. They're suing specifically for wages or unearned wages, or wages that they think that they should have earned that they didn't receive. And so what I'll say is, on the class action piece, those are really, really hard. Those tend to settle not because anyone did anything wrong necessarily, and not because something bad happened or someone broke the law, but because the cost benefit analysis for going to trial, going through trial, is not worth it for the brand. It is cheaper, actually, potentially, to settle for $1 million than it is to go through trial, which could be potentially $2 million just on attorney's fees and costs.
Yeah.
That's not even if you lose. If you lose, you're still on the hook for that $2 million plus potentially the other million that the jury decides is awarded to those litigants. And so that's a question that I've seen partners in my group, and that once, I don't have a case by myself. I've never recruited a client that wants to retain me for a case. Happy to help if you want to.
We'll get there someday, Sean.
Yeah, a shameless plug. But what I'll say is that early on, I've seen partners have that conversation with them. Is like, okay, like, here's our analysis of the claims. Here's, on their best day, what we think that they will win. Here's what it could potentially settle for based on some of the numbers that we have. How do you want to approach this? Do you want to fight this? Do you want to maybe get through discovery, which is kind of some of the preliminary rounds of litigation? Litigation takes years, but do you want to get through discovery and see like what documents they have, what documents that they're asking for, what information they're asking for, and then we can assess after that? Often people will go through, at least through discovery, which is still expensive. It can be $50,000 just to get through discovery, and that's on the low end, probably, depending on the kind of claim.
But even that, I gotta jump in there. Like,
I'm just gonna move to Montana and buy a farm and just stay away from people.
Yeah, I mean,
but even
it's
that,
not
right? Like,
it's not sexy. It's not. I like litigation as much as I do like it. I recognize the inherent suck that it has on smaller companies in particular. I think it's actually worse for smaller companies.
There's a group I'm working with right now who to exactly to that point. And this is one of the reasons I wanted us to talk about it. Is they've got an issue with a production facility, and there's a little bit of finger pointing going on in terms of an issue came up with the finished product, and it's a matter of kind of like, hey, where's the smoking gun? Who's responsible? So on and so forth, right? Which that part's not uncommon. But the brand owner, and again, it's a perfectly valid question. I don't knock them for asking it, but they're looking at me from an operational perspective of going, well, who should have known and who should have done better and who's, and even from their perspective, they're like, I'm not trying to burn their whole business down, but like, do
Mhm.
I have any legal recourse? And I'm like, look, I'm not a lawyer, but do you have 30, 50, 100 grand laying around to get through even just lawyers figuring out who's responsible? Because it sure as shit won't be me, and I'm not footing that bill, but it's probably going to look something like that, right?
Yeah.
And they're a small brand, and the answer, quite frankly, is absolutely fucking not. They do not have that money, right? I'm like,
Right.
you're better off to just swallow the pill, play as nicely as you can, and move on to another partner,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
And I
but
will
that's also why
say,
E&O insurance is so important. E&O
Mhm.
insurance cover
Yeah.
a lot of those costs, especially if you
Mm-hmm.
put the other piece of having insurance is that you need to put in the claim as
Mhm.
soon as you know that there's a potential legal claim, because I've seen
Mm.
some insurance claims be denied and E&O insurance won't cover the claim because you didn't notify the insurance carrier soon enough.
Yeah.
So make sure that as soon as there's a potential legal claim, you're on the phone with insurance being like, what do I need to do to
Yeah.
get you to cover some of this cost? Because if you're willing to fight it, like we're willing to fight it for you. Like I'm not afraid of really anyone who sends me a cease and desist letter.
Yeah.
And maybe that's my lack of humility, but
I feel like you
I'm not.
collect them in a room in your basement, Sean. You just have them on plaques on the wall.
Yeah.
Trophy.
But I'm not afraid to at least push back on some of their assumptions, because the other thing that we know, especially in employment litigation, is that the story is not complete.
Sure.
Everyone's perspectives are different, especially if you look around like a standard business dispute, like what you're talking about. There might have been people who have said like, hey, like, did someone check for this? Did someone look into this?
Right.
And someone might have, but maybe they just didn't see the issue. And that's
Mhm.
where these finer details is what makes litigation actually very expensive, because there's
Mhm.
usually not a smoking gun.
Mhm.
There's usually not
Mm-hmm.
a clear liability there, and so
Mhm.
that's the issue. But UJ, I don't know what
I'd
you
love
see
to
from your
grab
perspective.
Well,
some, dinner
so
with you
I-
one evening. Sorry,
Oh no, go ahead.
finish your thought. Go ahead.
Well, I have a little bit of a different approach than Sean because I'm not a litigator, but a lot of times when my clients get into commercial disputes, when I say my clients, I mean like other people's clients, because usually, they're bigger and there's more disputes. A lot of times, I mean, like I said, like a cease and desist, or like if you're the one who's been wronged or whatever. But I do think that a lot of this can be resolved via like outside of like litigation, with like the
Mm-hmm.
threat of litigation in an email, if that makes sense. Being like, I reviewed our agreement and here are the facts. Happy to, text my lawyer if necessary, but I think we can get this resolved. Like I like a mildly threatening email. Like it's not like fully like I'm gonna fucking sue, but it's like I will. And even if that's a lie, I mean I don't care. People lie all the time. Like who cares? You can like just don't say I will sue and then not sue, but you can absolutely be like I think we can get this resolved. Like a lot of, and like for manufacturing defects, there's actually like pretty strict law on like no matter where it ended up, like whose fault it was. So like there's probably like a legitimate answer regardless of whose fault it actually was. There's probably like a by law you are responsible for this, for manufacturing
Right,
specifically.
right.
So
That's funny.
Yeah.
Mildly.
so I
Mildly.
love a threatening email. And I also
Threatening.
will say like you do have to have a little bit of a cadence in emails. Like I had a client be like, this is my draft email I'm gonna send. And I was like, please do not send that to anybody. Like it was so emotional, and it was like, I've worked so hard for you, like
Right.
I've done all of this, and I was like, it's like I was like, we don't need to talk about any of that. It just like it says in the contract XYZ. Point that out and be like, hope we can work together going forward, and then
Right.
send it. Like we don't need
Right,
the
right.
emotional aspect of it, because you were like
I
I read
love
that
that.
and I was
Just
like, wow,
like-
I felt like I was being broken up with in college again. I was
Yeah,
like, wow.
just stick to the facts. We go through that.
Yeah.
Salvage it. Customer gets upset for a
Mhm.
variety of reasons, and we try to salvage it. But at the end of the day, if they don't want to go forward, we're like, okay, bye.
Right.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
pretty much it. So,
Oh, that's funny. So, Sam, with the last few minutes, you want to ask the question we always ask?
yeah. So we ask everybody that comes on the drink up is this question. So it's pretty deep. So if you're ready to answer it, but what's the difference between success and failure?
Oh.
I think
And I want to be clear, we don't necessarily mean legally. We just mean for you as a person. But if you want to give us your legal perspective answer, we will take that as well.
I think, I mean, for business, I think like success is being able to reach a deal and then, be done with it. But I think in like life, it's just personal growth is my version of success. As long as I'm better today than I was yesterday, or like better today than I was a year ago, I think that's success to me, because I've done something and it's to the positive. And that goes in waves, right? Like you can't always have like the bestest day, but like over time, I think of it like the S&P 500. Over the last 10 years, it's better, even though it's had its ups and downs. And that's what I think success is, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean,
I like that.
I would agree. I would also say that I don't know that I have figured that out quite yet necessarily either.
You should work on that.
Sorry, Sean, I have to
Yeah,
interrupt you.
we should work.
This-
That's what
this from the
therapy is
guy
for,
who-
truthfully.
Well, no, this from the
there-
guy who passed the bar and is now a lawyer is like, I don't know if I figured out what success is. Meh.
I mean, I think that it's influenced by so many things. Like, for me, like Adam knows this, but I grew up in a very like, we were very poor whenever I first started growing up, and in some ways, like people would look at my journey and be like, oh, that's the quintessential American like upbringing. Like you started poor and now you are financially successful, whatever. So I think financial stability like is a value that I feel like I have now, and that feels like a success. That's a success that's kind of minor in the grand scheme of things, though, if I'm being honest. Because for me, the true success is around how I treat people. If I feel like I'm walking away from a conversation and I wasn't engaged, or I wasn't listening to the person across from me, or if I wasn't helpful and like being a friend, that's a failure in my opinion. And that's such a, maybe for some people that feels very minor, but for me that matters a lot. Like I go home and I ruminate over those things. Like I have pretty bad anxiety, so I tend to think too much internally. And so if I can walk away from a conversation and feel like I've heard someone, that I was a good support for them, and that's in friendships, that's in client relationships, that's whatever, I feel like that's a success in and of itself, because that speaks to my own ethos. That means that I was aligned with my own ethics, and that I was able to deliver in that day. That's not an everyday thing. Like I have bad days. There's some days I'm not listening to my partner and like the crap that he's going through. There's some days I'm not listening to my mom and like the crap that she's going through. And those days I walk away and I reflect and I'm like, that was shitty. But more often than not, I try to just reflect and think like, was I a good person today? Was I a good human? And that
Sure.
means success to me.
Oh, I think it's a really transparent answer, and I mean, speaking for myself, it's the reason I've kept you around, or at least wanted to be a part of your circle. I'll put it that way. So,
No, thank you.
well, thank you both for joining us this morning. We got a couple things before we wrap up. A, how do people find you, or how do you want them to find you, or how do they find Taft? Which you pick your poison on how you answer.
You can, if you just look up UJ Paradise Taft, my firm website should be right there. It has my phone number, fax number, which you should never use because I don't even know where the fax machine is, and then my email. So yeah, feel free to reach out with like general questions, or like if you want like any like links to like the free business clinics, I have all of those. So I'm happy to send those to you, and then maybe we can work together like on a pro bono basis if that like qualifies.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
You shouldn't have told me that, because now I'm going to send like the bananas are in the fridge faxes to just whoever's getting those and confuse the shit out of people.
Yeah, like
I don't know
apparently
where the fax
like
machine
what's
is.
going on. I don't know. Like why is there
Never
even
seen
one?
fax.
We fax the IRS, and that's the only people I know we fax. But I mean, I don't do it. Somebody does
That's
it.
amazing.
That's a question for Monday for sure.
This
Mhm.
is this is going to be how I entertain myself over the holidays.
I have
go
a,
ahead.
I have a fax app I pay $5 a month for, because when my dad died a few years ago, was when death is hard, by the way, to let
Sure.
you know, just to get things done. It took us almost a year and a half to get everything squared away.
Oh
with
my
his death.
God.
Yep.
Jesus. Well, Sean, what about you? I'm assuming you also have a webpage that I can fax random shit to.
I hope you can't fax the web page, but
Well, thank you. Yes.
yes, you can find me in the same way. Just look up Sean Smallwood Taft. It should bring you to my bio page and how to contact me. Otherwise, if you want to email me, my email is literally smallwood at, I think it's at
Taftlaw.com.
taftlaw.com. I don't know the ending ever.
You should
I
know your email, Sean.
Yeah.
I should know my
You should
email.
know your
That is
email.
Is
really
it taftlaw.com
embarrassing.
though?
It is. It is.
It is,
taftlaw.com.
Yeah, so it's just smallwood at taftlaw.com. You can always email me. I am attached to my email
Oh,
as
there we
much as
go.
I hate to admit that.
So I got it screening here, taftlaw.com.
Amazing.
That's
so cool.
Slick. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so
showing my
I was gonna
age
say we'll get closing comments from everybody and we'll wrap up. But yeah, we'll send you guys this as a once we kind of get it processed. If you guys want to chop it up and post it, or your marketing team wants to do shit with it, you're of course more than welcome. But Sam, you want to start us off on closing thoughts for today?
Yeah, thank you everybody for coming on. I was a little bit discombobulated trying to figure out the computer crashing before I got started. So thanks for riding the wave. I really appreciate y'all coming and talking about the importance of getting counsel. And all kidding aside, we started a business without an attorney, and we were using some contracts, with different people, and UJ was very helpful to us with some of the contracts that we do with 1099 workers. And you need agreements for those folks as well. Don't think that if they're independent, you don't need an agreement. You need an agreement with them. So we've been working through that over the last year, UJ. So thank you very much. And I would definitely tell you, reach out for Sean and UJ if you're starting a business or even you have a business. It's never too late to talk to an attorney because they at least will point you down the direction you need to go. And I tell you, making that investment is much cheaper than waiting to make that investment. So thank you.
UJ, you want to go next? Any closing thoughts?
Well, I just want to say thank you for having us. I've loved working with Adam and Sam and all of the people that you've referred us over the year, like 2 years now. It's been really exciting, and I think, I'm just grateful that you guys gave us this platform to kind of talk about us, and we got to learn a little bit more about you.
Absolutely, thank you. Shanzi, what do you got?
I mean, I have to say the same as UJ. Like, I've always loved everyone that you've referred us to. I know, I don't know if Ryan is listening in, but Ryan
He might
from
be.
On the Rocks,
Mm-hmm.
such a cool guy. I've really enjoyed working with him, and I've enjoyed working with you, obviously, Adam, both personally and professionally. And so we're always here to help. Those are kind of like my closing thoughts. And even if UJ and I don't have the answer, we'll find someone for you. Like you can bet that we're some of the hardest workers whenever it comes to you bringing your business to us. Like we will work hard to make sure that you get the right answer. And so that's a small plug for both of us. And I know that personally because I work with UJ every day and I see her do it. So
Yeah, and I'm going to make a much larger plug for the two of you, for anybody who's listening and for anybody that, might catch this in the future. Sean was the first, when I knew I was going to start consulting, 14 months ago now, Sean was one of the first calls I made because I was like, I'm going to put my fucking foot in my mouth and I need a lawyer. And I just happened to know him, which was incredibly useful. Right? Yeah, we sound effects.
this is so fancy.
Oh my gosh. I thought that was me, and I was like, oh no.
Right? I know, we're like, what feedback are we getting? Fuck. But more specifically, Sean obviously introduced me to UJ, and I don't even know if I told you this, UJ, but in the 14 months, 12, however long we've been working together since you kind of helped me draft that initial agreement, and the updates that we've made to it over time, I've literally never had anybody redline one at all, right? I send it to them, and they're like, "Cool, sounds good," and it gets signed, right? Which, like, I'm sure part of that's luck. Part of that might be the folks I'm working with are a little newer, but I also feel like a large part of that is like shit got done right the first time, and it was developed with intent and care and focus, and so. That's me speaking highly of your work because it's been super beneficial to me to not have to fucking bounce all that shit back and forth over and over again. Going back to the yes, you guys have to charge what you have to charge, but also it was worth it because I didn't have to pay it 6 times over to get something done. So no, I appreciate you both being on. Obviously, it's wonderful to see you. And with that, we'll wrap up and let everybody get back to their Saturday. But thanks for joining us, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Everybody.
Have a good Saturday. Bye bye.